Hey guys, Simon here from Top Tennis Training, and in this video I want to talk about forehand lag. But before we get into it, what exactly is forehand lag? Now when the ball is coming up to my racket, there is a moment where the bottom of the racket, the butt cap of the racket, is leading the way. And this is evident on Federer's forehand, Verdasco's forehand, Nadal's forehand. Now, there's been a lot of debate about whether this lag should happen naturally as a result of your biomechanics of the stroke, or you should force this lag. Now you definitely don't want to be forcing it time and time again when you're playing. You want to make it a habit so that it does occur naturally over time. Now there's two things that set up the forehand lag. The first thing is the way that you prepare for the stroke, so the preparation, the backswing basically. Now if I take my racket back like so, it's very hard for me to then force this lag at the very last second, and I'm going to have an extremely flexible wrist, and I'm going to have perfect timing to pull off this type of movement. If I'm in that position equally and I try to now get from here to here, it's extremely hard, and that would take a lot of work. But if I start with my racket head up, if I start with my racket head in this position, which is what Federer, Djokovic, Nadal and countless other pros do, then what happens at the very start of the swing is that my wrist lays back naturally in a relaxed way. I'm not forcing it back, I'm not holding it back like this, but it's coming back naturally because of my technique. Now this, later in the swing, will save me time when I want to produce that lag. Now something very important to mention when you are starting your swing, if I take my left hand away, if I put it behind my back now, and I have to get into that same position with my racket head higher than my grip level, now there's a lot of tension in my wrist because I'm pulling the wrist back, I'm pulling the racket back using the wrist and using my forearm muscles. So I'm having a lot of tension now, and if I kept doing this time and time again, I think I would get injured myself, and most of my students would get injured. But there's a huge secret. If you use your non-hitting hand, this is your left hand if you're a right-handed player, if you hold the throat of the racket, if I'm holding it like this and I pull that racket back and up, now without any tension in my right wrist, it's happened naturally because of my left hand. I'm using that left hand to pull it back. So this is something that's extremely important. Don't force the racket up with your right wrist, but have it come back naturally with the help of your left hand. So once again, what we don't want to be doing is having the racket like so, and then me forcing my wrist to pull back the racket like this. I want this to happen with the use of my left hand, while my right hand stays completely relaxed, my fingers are loose, my wrist is loose, and there's no tension in my wrist, because I want to feel that this is effortless. And if you can do this on your forehand, you'll see a huge difference instantly. So you see there that Federer is in that position when he starts to swing, and this is not by coincidence. This is because from here he's already cocked back the wrist slightly, and it's much easier for him to then get that lag later in the swing. So if the ball's coming through with quite a lot of pace, a lot of spin, especially if he's playing players like Nadal or Djokovic, if Federer was to start with his racket down here and then try to reach that same position that he's got, it would be almost impossible for him to time it. But by starting in this position, whatever he does in the back, it doesn't actually really matter that much, because he's starting in this position, he's turning his body, he's got the unit turn, and now from here, sometimes we'll see him with his strings closed when he's going for more spin, and sometimes we'll see him opening up the strings, facing more towards the side of the court, the right side of the court, and this is when he wants to go for a flatter shot and hit more through the ball. So the strings are facing down like so, or like this. But in both instances, you can see that this racket is lagging behind. So the tip of the racket, the top of the racket, is lagging way behind the butt cap of the racket. Now this does happen naturally on Federer's forehand because he's made it a habit. Now this lag is not happening by chance. This is happening as a result of Federer working on this technique, mastering this technique, and now it's a habit, so it happens all the time. Now some coaches and players alike will say you shouldn't think about the forehand lag. It should happen naturally because you're using your body in the correct way. Now what about when Federer's on the run? How does he still achieve that lag? Because a common thing that a lot of coaches will teach is that the lag happens because of the hips and the body and the unit turn, the coil and uncoil. But what about when you're on the full run and Federer's stretching out for a ball, but he's still got his racket lagging first, even though he hasn't been able to use his body as he would on an easier type of ball? How is that lag happening on those type of shots? It's again coming back to the starting position of Federer's racket. The wrist being cocked back like so, and when he's waiting in that power position, when he's starting this part, from here, if he has a relaxed wrist, this part is very easy for him. Now this then takes me on to my next point, which is about using the body in the correct way. If I use my body in the correct way, so this uncoiling motion, so when we're winding up for the forehand, we're doing this coiling. I'm stretching my oblique muscles, my side abdominal muscles, and I'm also using the hips to now generate this uncoiling motion. So from here, my left arm is stretched across in line with the baseline. This will then start to open. My hips then start to open, my trunk then starts to open, and if my wrist is relaxed, I should then start to get that racket lag, like you can see here. But if my wrist is rigid, I won't achieve that position. But it goes hand in hand. You want to have a relaxed wrist, so you want to allow this lag to occur, and you don't want to be forcing it on every single forehand, because if you end up pulling back the wrist and holding it there throughout the stroke, you might end up with a serious wrist injury. But you want it to be a natural thing for your body to achieve, and this is why I advise you to start with the racket head higher than the grip level when you're starting your forehand. For most of the students who I've coached, if I've just shown them this at the start and I've shown them the unit turn, they naturally get this lag, whether it's a straight arm like this or it's a bent arm like this. Now if I start with my racket in this position, it's so much easier for me to then naturally, because my wrist is already slightly back, now it's much easier for me to then go all the way. And if you imagine that I was hitting the ball with my palm of the palm of my hand, I wouldn't hit the ball like this with a straight arm and a straight wrist. I'd go to the ball and relax my hand, especially if I want to hit the ball out in front. Or if I was going to catch a ball, I'd go to the ball like this with my wrist laid back. So I'm in this position, and that's the same feeling you want to have when you're hitting your forehand. You want to feel that your wrist is laid back here, but you're not forcing it. It's a natural thing that's happened because of my stroke mechanics and because my wrist is loose. If my wrist is very tight, that won't occur. Now there's a very simple way for you to work on this and to feel this lag on the forehand. So what I want you to do, go out on the court, get yourself a ball, feel that the bottom of the racket is pointing down towards the net in this position. Don't force the wrist back, have it back but have it in a relaxed, loose way. And from here, now just drop feed yourself the ball and just feel that you're going for as long as you can with the racket leading, the bottom of the racket leading the way to the oncoming ball. So it's like I want to hit the ball with this, and at the last second then the racket head comes through naturally, because if I don't come through with it, I won't make contact with the ball. So once again, I'm starting with the racket like so, I drop and I go. Starting with the racket like so. You can play around with the strings. Sometimes you can have the strings closed and sometimes facing this side of the court. But again, I'm in that position, drop, and I go. And that's feeling that lag here. And see how long you can hold it until you then come through with the racket head. So a quick recap. Should you work on your forehand lag? Absolutely. It will give you more control, more power, and you'll feel a lot easier, that effortless power coming your way. Should it happen naturally? Yes, but over time, because you've worked on it. So you can work on this drill, then you can progress, and you can end up with your racket head like this, and then you still feel that you're getting that lag. All that time you're trying to keep your wrist as loose as possible. You're not forcing it back, you're not cocking it back and having tension in the wrist. You're holding it back in a relaxed way. And this goes back again to why this left hand is so important. So thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned quite a lot from this video. Now if you want more help on your forehand, we have an entire forehand blueprint course, which I'll leave the link under this video so you can go and check that out. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, click the like button as well, and also leave a comment down below. And we'll see you soon. All the best.